On our newscast tonight, Korea's gross national income, a gauge of the population's purchasing power, rose 2.9% in the second quarter. The latest gain came at the fastest pace in 4 years. The U.S. Senate Foreign Relations Committee votes in favor of military action in Syria. All that's left now is for Congress to give the nod of approval, at which time airstrikes on Syria would begin. 400 tons of contaminated water are being produced every day at Japan's crippled Fukushima nuclear plant. TEPCO announces new plans to stop the flow of groundwater with a dam. Stay with us for these stories and more.
It is 11 a.m. in Paris, 2 p.m. in Azerbaijan, and 6 on a Thursday evening here in Seoul. You're watching Early Edition at 6. I'm Kim Hyun-ji.
And I'm Daniel Chen. Thank you for joining us. We start off with some hopeful numbers for the Korean economy.
Korea's gross national income climbed at its fastest pace in 4 years in the second quarter.
The nation's economy also grew more than 1% in the April to June period for the first time in more than 2 years.
So, is Korea's economy on the path to recovery? Arirang's Hwang Ji-hye has some answers.
Korea's gross national income, which is a gauge of the population's purchasing power, rose 2.9% in the second quarter from a quarter earlier, the fastest pace in 4 years. The Bank of Korea says improved trade conditions that were boosted by falling oil prices and price gains of major export products like semiconductors played key roles. The gain in Korea's gross national income has been speeding up over the past 2 straight quarters. The nation's economy, meanwhile, grew 1.1% in the April to June period from the previous quarter, rising above 1% for the first time in 9 quarters. This is unchanged from the central bank's earlier estimate. While today's figures raise hopes of escaping from the nation's recent sluggish growth, experts are doubtful about a sustained recovery.
The rise in the nation's growth rate comes mostly from expanded fiscal spending in the second quarter of this year. So whether the growth pace will continue remains unknown.
It's no surprise then that the nation's private spending, one of the main growth engines, rose a mere 0.7% in the second quarter from the previous quarter. And with the Chinese economy slowing and the U.S. Federal Reserve planning to pull back its monetary stimulus program, no one is sure the Korean economy will regain its full strength in the second half of this year. Hwang Ji-hye, Arirang News.
Turning to the latest on the political scandal rocking the nation. For the first time in Korean history, an incumbent lawmaker is facing arrest on sedition charges. The Suwon District Court is now deliberating on whether it will issue an arrest warrant for Lee Seok-gi after having questioned him earlier in the day. Yoo-rian brings us the latest.
The Suwon District Court is now deciding on whether to issue the arrest warrant for lawmaker Lee Seok-gi. Lee is currently being held at a police station in Suwon, where he is awaiting the decision, which is expected by late Thursday at around 9 p.m. Korea time. The lawmaker is facing 3 main charges by the National Intelligence Service. They are conspiring to stage a revolt with a group of North Korea sympathizers, plotting to disrupt South Korean systems, including key infrastructure such as communication lines and railways, and creating an organization benefiting North Korea called the Revolutionary Organization, or RO. Lee denies all the charges. The main evidence against Lee, an audio recording of a meeting of the RO in May, was submitted to the court by the spy agency. Lee's lawyers have argued, however, that the spy agency pieced parts of the recording together to distort Lee's intention, and that the contents do not provide enough details to support the charges against Lee. The warrant examination is expected to end late on Thursday afternoon. Yoo-rian, Arirang News.
President Park Geun-hye's debut on the stage of multilateral diplomacy will be at the G20 meeting in Russia starting Thursday. So what will top the agenda at this year's summit of world leaders? Our presidential office correspondent Oh Jin-ju gives us a preview of what to expect.
This year's G20 Leaders Summit will mainly focus on addressing the pending economic and financial issues developed and emerging countries are divided on. One of the notable topics up for debate is countering the possible negative effects of Washington's plan to scale back its quantitative easing program. While developed nations believe that putting an end to stimulus measures should come as part of economic normalization, developing countries are concerned that the move could hit their financial sectors hard due to a surge in capital outflow. Other major topic points include ensuring midterm financial stability, reforming the global financial system, and preventing tax avoidance by multinational firms. Korea's presidential office of Changwon explained that this year's summit here in St. Petersburg aims to revive the original function of the G20, which is coordinating policies among major economies so that they can overcome economic difficulties together. In particular, this year, the host country, Russia, is putting great emphasis on the issue of job creation, with the world facing low growth and high unemployment. Another hot issue on the table is Syria. Although it's not on the official G20 agenda, a fierce debate is likely to take place behind the scenes, especially between the U.S. and Russia, over the possibility of military action in the war-torn country. Washington will try to draw support from the international community for intervention, especially since Britain and Germany have decided not to take part in any military strike. Russia, a firm ally of the Assad regime, will in turn try to use the meeting as what the Russian president called a good platform to turn the tables on the U.S. Oh Jin-ju, Arirang News, St. Petersburg.
Officials from the two Koreas are locked in talks at the Kaesong Industrial Complex this afternoon as they look to smooth out issues related to customs, communications, and personnel safety at the Inter-Korean Factory Park once operations there resume. Military officials are discussing the reconnection of a hotline that links workers at Kaesong to the South Korean military. The hotline can be used by South Korean personnel in case of an emergency. North Korea severed the hotline in March amid tensions between the two Koreas. Meanwhile, a second joint committee meeting between officials from South and North Korea will take place next Tuesday to discuss the timeline for reopening the complex.
We now turn to the latest on the Syria issue. Washington is one step closer to launching a military attack on the Bashar al-Assad regime for its alleged use of chemical weapons on the Syrian people, as a key U.S. Senate committee authorized the use of military force in Syria. Connie Lee has more.
Gathered at Capitol Hill on Wednesday, the Senate Foreign Relations Committee has voted 10-7, authorizing military action in Syria. The authorization now must gain approval in the full Senate and the House of Representatives before taking effect. The resolution gives President Barack Obama the authority to order a limited military action against the Syrian regime, as long as it does not exceed 90 days. The resolution also states that ground troops cannot be used and that all military force should be aimed at preventing Syria from carrying out future chemical weapons attacks. In Sweden, ahead of the G20 summit in Russia on Wednesday, President Obama challenged the international community to act.
My credibility is not on the line. The international community's credibility is on the line. And America and Congress's credibility is on the line because we give lip service to the notion that these international norms are important.
Meanwhile, in Germany, an intelligence official has revealed an intercepted phone call proves that Syrian President Bashar al-Assad personally ordered last month's gas attack. Russia, however, is still not convinced. Russian officials continue to urge the U.S. to come up with more evidence to show that Syria did indeed use chemical weapons against the opposition. In the meantime, UN Secretary General Ban Ki-moon is demanding that the Syrian crisis be resolved within the framework of the UN Charter. He also said that the results of the UN investigation into the alleged chemical attack in Syria will be announced soon. Connie Lee, Arirang News.
South Korea's defense ministry estimates North Korea possesses up to 5,000 tons of chemical weapons. Ministry spokesperson Kim Min-seok told reporters Thursday that the North has been producing chemical weapons since the 1980s and is presumed to possess between 2,500 and 5,000 tons of various chemical agents that can be delivered via a missile or other long-range artillery. This is in response to U.S. Defense Secretary Chuck Hagel's remark at the Senate Foreign Relations Committee meeting Wednesday that North Korea has a large stockpile of chemical weapons. South Korean Defense Minister Kim Kwan-jin expressed concerns that Syria's use of chemical weapons might send the wrong message to Pyongyang, making it think it is acceptable to use those weapons. Now, not many people associate North Korea with alpine sports, but the leadership in Pyongyang has decided to branch out and build the nation's first large-scale ski resort. Pyongyang wants to wrap up construction by next month, and the urgency to get everything ready has left some pundits wondering whether the communist state will make a fanciful bid to co-host the 2018 Pyeongchang Winter Olympic Games. Our Han Da-eun has more.
On a highway about 2.5 hours away from North Korea's capital, Pyongyang, a road sign catches everyone's eye. The signpost indicates a ski resort is nearby, and there aren't that many of them in a country where most people can barely afford to feed themselves. The regime recently unveiled the construction site of its first large-scale ski resort on Masik Hill, located in southwestern part of the country, to Japanese media. A tourist hotel can also be seen on the hill, waiting for some finishing touches. Masik Hill in Gangwon Province has an altitude of 770 meters and is blanketed with heavy snow during winter. The country's leader, Kim Jong-un, has shown great interest in turning the hill into a world-class ski resort, reportedly visiting the site twice in just 3 months. Kim is known to have personally ordered some 10,000 workers to build the resort, aiming to complete construction by October 10th. There is a major hurdle to overcome, however, as the Swiss government recently banned a local ski firm from providing North Korea with ski lifts, saying it goes against the country's law prohibiting luxury exports to the north.
Yes, there are several obstacles. But the ski resort will not close down just because of sanctions. We are used to surviving under sanctions.
Japan's broadcaster TBS, citing sources in Pyongyang, reports that North Korea seems to be eyeing up the chance to co-host the 2018 Pyeongchang Winter Games with South Korea by completing the construction as soon as possible. Han Da-eun, Arirang News.
The president of Germany visited a village in France on Wednesday in a symbolic gesture to seek forgiveness for his country's wartime atrocities. The move stands in stark contrast with the actions of Korea's neighbor to the east, Japan, whose leaders have yet to acknowledge their wartime wrongdoings. Our Son Jung-in reports.
German President Joachim Gauck has become the first senior diplomat from his country to visit the village of Oradour-sur-Glane in west-central France, where more than 600 people were killed by Nazi troops during World War II. The ruins in the village are preserved as a lasting symbol of the wartime atrocities committed there after former French President Charles de Gaulle ordered the village not to be rebuilt in order to show the evils of the Nazi occupation. Current French President François Hollande joined Gauck, who laid a wreath on the monument to the victims and asked for forgiveness for his country's wrongdoing during wartime.
Germany committed brutalities in this village. That's why it is hard for us to visit the site.
The German president attended a memorial service for fallen soldiers and offered an apology to the bereaved families. President Hollande said the visit is a peaceful gesture towards the friendship between the two countries and praised Gauck's decision to go to the site.
Gauck's visit represents a symbol of a Franco-German reconciliation.
Germany has made several efforts to redress its wartime past. In 1970, West German Chancellor Willy Brandt traveled to Poland and dropped to his knees before a monument commemorating victims of wartime atrocities in an act of repentance. In a similar move, German Chancellor Angela Merkel visited Israel in 2011 and has made several visits to Poland. Since she took office in 2005, several war criminals have been prosecuted for their crimes, including a 91-year-old man who was sentenced to 5 years in prison for his part in the killing of Jews at a Nazi extermination camp. 손정인, Arirang News.
Shifting gears now, Arirang TV has signed an MOU with Azerbaijan's Khazar TV with hopes of fostering a mutual exchange of programs to bring the latest from Korea to Azerbaijan and a flavor of the Caspian nation to Korea. The CEOs from the two stations met in Baku on Wednesday local time and agreed to a 5-year exchange of diverse content in various forms. Khazar TV is one of the most watched channels in Azerbaijan. Meanwhile, Arirang TV CEO Son Jie also met with Azerbaijan's Minister of Culture and Tourism on Wednesday to discuss ways to widen cultural exchanges through tourism and media cooperation.
Earlier this week, we reported on an interesting study that says Koreans are less inclined to rush into marriage these days. A paper published by the Korea Institute for Health and Social Affairs says nearly 24% of 20-somethings now in the country are likely to stay single for the rest of their lives, which poses problems for a nation already struggling with a very low birth rate.
That's right. The paper goes on to say that the average age for a Korean man to get hitched for the first time has risen from 28 to 32 over the past 15 years. And the average has also risen for women from 26 to 29. And for an in-depth look at this phenomenon of shunning or delaying marriage among young people, we are now joined by Dr. Cho Young-tae, Professor of Public Health and Demography at Seoul National University via Skype. Hello, Dr. Cho. Thank you for joining us.
Hello.
Hello, Dr. Cho. Let's begin with perhaps the most shocking part about this paper. It says that if the current trend continues, 1 in 5 people in their 20s now will not get married for the rest of their lives. Where did that forecast come from? Can you tell us about the study?
Yeah, this study was conducted by Dr. Sang-lim Lee at KIHASA, as you just mentioned, at Korea Institute for Health and Social Affairs. And he constructed the marriage life table. Marriage life table, you probably know the life expectancy, how long you're going to live up to. So in your life, your life expectancy, how many years you're going to live up to. So just like that, marriage, we can construct a marriage life table. So he constructed a marriage life table and he found this result.
I see. And the research also shows, Dr. Cho, that a majority of people who are still single on their 45th birthday, they will stay that way for the rest of their lives. Now, why is the age 45 such an important, significant factor here?
Well, there are two reasons. One is biological reason that usually in demography, reproductive age, we start from age 15 and we go up to 49. 49 is the age where the women usually have a menopause. So we consider 15 to 49 as the reproductive age. Even though it's for men, we still use that. But 45, some people, they have menopause around 45. Some people have a little bit later than 49. So that's one reason. Another reason is that social reason. That's that once you reach about age 45, then the probability of getting married or probability of having next child, it's about the same with the 45 to 49. So that's why he used the 45 instead of 49.
I see. Korea is bound to face more problems as more people shun marriage these days because the nation is rapidly aging with a low birth rate. So can you tell us more about the challenges this trend presents?
Well, first, in this country, without marriage, we cannot have baby. So that people try to, well, not try, people are reluctant to get married and they postpone their marriage means that the fertility rate will go further down. So as you all know that the importance of fertility to the future of Korean society, then without marriage, there will be less and less children. So there probably the sustainability of Korean future, it's at stake position right now. So that's the one very important issue.
Well, these day and age, I think we are freed from the stigma of not being married or not getting hitched at a late age. So maybe that's another factor that contributes. But what about the government's efforts, welfare and other systems that's tailored to married couple, that there aren't that many measures to encourage young people to get married, some would argue. What's your take on that, Dr. Joe?
Yeah, actually the marriage, I just mentioned that without marriage there will be no childbearing. So, and that means also without marriage there's no families. In this society, we are losing families. And you know that the basic unit of our society is family. So now there will be the disappearance of family, then that will cause a lot of social problems. And of course, the government knows the problem. So that, but the thing is that so far, governments, they spend a lot of effort and money, budgets and everything. But mostly the government's budget has been focused only on the child rearing environment, so that we know the child care, they spend a lot of money on that. But this kind of tells us that the importance of marriage, not just focus only on the child care, but also we need to take into account that the marriage.
Right. So what can the government do to encourage people to get married and also to offer welfare benefits to both married and unmarried individuals?
Well, first of all, that we have to take into look at the causes why people are not trying to get married. Because a lot of people, they believe that early marriage or even marriage itself is kind of disadvantage in their lives, and there are many reasons on that. So government should make that people consider marriage, particularly early marriage in their life, is more advantage in their lives. For instance, we know the high price of marriage itself. Marriage ceremony and marriage, to get married life is very costly in this country. It has to go down. And also, once you get married and then if you have an early marriage, then your life as time goes on, it has to be more fun and with your family. But right now in the Korean society, it's a lot of people just saying that marriage, you should try to not to get married or try to be away from marriage. There's a kind of culture developed like that. So we need to change that too.
So it's a change that we need to instill from all of us. The marriage earlier, the better in some sense maybe. Dr. Jo Young-tae, thank you for joining us today. We look forward to having you again someday soon. Now let's get a check on the weather forecast with our Michelle Park at the Weather Center. Michelle, it does feel like autumn has finally arrived.
And with good reason, our daytime highs have finally dropped down near the mid-20s.
So Michelle, will things stay this way, or are we expecting the summer heat to show up again and surprise us all?
It does look like the temperatures will fluctuate, but it won't reach the point where we feel unpleasant. Tomorrow we expect a cloudy day in most parts of the central regions and gloomy with hardly any sunshine in the southern parts of the nation. Taking a closer look at the forecast, our morning temperatures will stay in the 20s. Seoul starts off the morning at 19 degrees and reach 26 in the afternoon. Meanwhile, cities in the south such as Daegu and Busan will peak at 25 and 24 respectively. Down onto Jeju Island, we can expect showers tomorrow night until Saturday. Meanwhile, Dokdo's low dips to 21 degrees and Mount Kumgang will be chilly even at noon. Well, that's all for today. I'm Michelle Park and have a wonderful evening.
Thank you for that, Michelle. And that's all from us for this hour, but do tune in again tomorrow, 6 p.m. for more. Thank you for watching. This has been Daniel Che.
And I'm Kim Hyun-ji. Stay tuned to Arirang for more news coming up.